And this month was a very wonderful, special month because in this month was the appearance day of Sri Radha, the Divine Feminine. And so today our sanga is on Sri Radha, the original sacred feminine. And we've been having so many guest speakers, which has been complete just really, really fortunate to be hearing from so many guest speakers the last few months. And I think that our hearts are all so warmed and excited for today's session because we're back with our Urban Devi Mama. Um, we're back with the founder of Urban Devi and just our beloved dear Rukmini Devi, and we're all just really ready to soak up hearing from her. And normally I always say, "Oh, we're not going to introduce Rukmini because you all already know her," but we are going to introduce Rukmini today. She is an activist in women's spiritual empowerment and interfaith dialogue. She is the founder of Urban Devi. You can also go to urbandevi.com. And she also has a Patreon. And if you're interested in getting on her Patreon, we'll tell you more about that at the end and post the link. And she's based out of the Bhakti Center, where she's a member of the board of directors. She's also a trustee of the Museum of Sacred Art in Belgium, and she's been traversing the path of bhakti for most of her life since she was 16 years old, living in India and Canada and the US as one of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada's very first disciples here in the West. And she is featured in the film Woman of Bhakti, and she travels the world internationally and teaches and writes and leads workshops. She's also the mother of the famous Gauravani Kirtan artists, and together they lead a bhakti immersion kirtan adventure to India each year if you're interested in getting information about that. I don't know if you are you all planning already for next year with COVID or
I think everyone's just, staying put this year.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with all of that. But she also lives in Washington, D.C., where her husband, Anutsma Prabhu, who is on the governing body commission of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, lead a Vaishnava Bhakti tradition Christian dialogue and a Vaishnava Muslim dialogue each year. And she truly sees the world as being animated by spirit and practices an eco bhakti, seeing truth and beauty in nature and the world as kindred spirits, which is also the name of the store that her and her husband used to have. So she's just an incredible spiritual activist and a spiritual leader for all of us around the world. So many thousands of people look to her for inspiration and mentorship, and she's changed so many of our lives. So we're so grateful to hear from you today. And now we pass the baton to you and we shut up.
Thank you so much for such a loving introduction. And I'll say a few prayers of invocation. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaham Dadati Sapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Sarasate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangolam Gaite Girim Yatkvipastamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripasindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And as Champak Lata Saki Devi Dasi said, last Tuesday was the appearance day of Srimati Radharani. So we wanted to dedicate this monthly sanga to hearing about her qualities, which are unlimited. And so we'll try to share something. So first of all, who is Srimati Radharani? Let me tell you. Radha is the one who gives pleasure to Govinda, and she is also the enchantress of Govinda. She is the be-all and end-all of Govinda and the crest jewel of all his consorts. The transcendental goddess Srimati Radharani is the direct counterpart of Lord Sri Krishna. She is the central figure for all the goddesses of fortune. She possesses all the attractiveness to attract the all-attractive Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, and she is the primeval personality, internal potency of the Lord. Lord Krishna enchants the world, but Sri Radha enchants even him. Therefore, she is the supreme goddess. Sri Radha is the full power, and Lord Krishna is the possessor of full power. The two are not different. And Radha and Krishna are one, but they've taken two forms to enjoy the mellows of pastimes. So that's a little bit from the Chaitanya Charitamrita about who is Sri Radha. But actually, Sri Radha or Sri Radhika or Srimati Radharani also has another very mystical name, Veda Gopya, which means that the one who is hidden even in the Vedas. So did you know that her name is not even mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, but mentioned indirectly in a verse that starts with Anaya Radito Nunam. So let me explain a little bit of that story. That, if you've heard of a book called Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Maharaj Parikshit is speaking to his mother. It's sort of like, that story is that his mother wanted to hear because he was about to leave this world, and his mom wanted to hear the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam from him. So he explains to his mother that his guru, who he heard Srimad Bhagavatam from, Sukadev Goswami, has not been able to mention the name of any of the gopis while he's describing Srimad Bhagavatam. And the reason was, if he would pronounce their names, he would feel such acute burning love, and he would feel so much ecstasy that his throat would be choked and he would be unable to recite the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's why their names are not mentioned. But indirectly, he mentions her name as this in this Anaya Radito Nunam, as the one who is the best worshiper of Krishna. So that's a little bit about the secret mystery and confidential nature of her name. It's also said that Radharani Tattva, or the truth of Radharani, shouldn't be discussed superficially or frivolously, but only with great care and precaution. So she's the most confidential associate of the Lord, and her glories remain confidential even in the pages of the Vedas. So I wanted to share with you a very, very favorite prayer of mine to Radharani that was spoken by Raghunath Das Goswami. He says, Devi Dukha Kulasagaro Dare Duyamanam Ati Durgatam Janam Tvam Kripaya Prabalanokayat Bhutam Prapaya Swapada Pankajalayam. And here's the beautiful translation. Oh goddess, kindly hear this unfortunate person now drowning in an ocean of pain. This is the mood of separation of the great devotees. Place him I'm going to change it to her because I'm praying like this too. So I'm going to change the gender. Place her in the sturdy boat of your mercy and ferry her to the wonderful realm of your lotus feet. So it's a beautiful prayer to Srimati Radharani. So the story goes that Radha and Krishna are eternally in the spiritual world in Goloka Vrindavan, where everyone there is eternally youthful. But Radha was desiring to see the childhood pastimes of Krishna, and Krishna was desiring to hear about the appearance and babyhood and childhood pastimes of Radharani. So Krishna was asking Radharani, please come to the material world with me, come to earth with me, and join me in these pastimes of love. But Radharani said, no, I can't go anywhere where there's no Govardhan hill and where there's no Yamuna river. So Krishna assured her that the Govardhan, sacred Govardhan, would also come to earth, and the sacred Yamuna river would also come to earth. So when Radharani appeared on earth, she accepted King Vrishabhanu and his beautiful wife Kirtida, who's sometimes called Kirtida Sundari. They were performing austerities for many, many years to have a saintly baby like Radharani. And there's several stories that talk about her appearance in different ways. They were praying to the goddess Katyayani, and at one point the goddess Katyayani gave them a beautiful box that was in the shape of a golden egg that was radiant like 1,000 suns. And in that box was this beautiful lotus-eyed child, Sri Radha. There's another story that once her father was bathing, taking his sacred bath in the Yamuna River, and while he was bathing, 1,000-petaled lotus came up and bumped him, and he opened his eyes, and there was this beautiful, beautiful baby girl, the color of molten gold. And we hear this Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi, that Radharani is considered to be the color of molten gold. So gold is a beautiful color, but when they melt it, it takes on a reddish hue. So she is like a golden, slightly reddish hue. But when she appeared, they found this beautiful baby, but she didn't open her eyes. And they were so happy. She was so beautiful. And they were so overjoyed to have such a beautiful daughter. But they were also sad that she was blind and deaf and couldn't speak. But what happened was, in order to celebrate with their friends, Nanda Maharaj with his wife Yasoda came to the home of Vrishabhanu and Kirtida, and they brought their baby Krishna, and they all embraced. And while they were talking about the birth of this new appearance of this new baby girl, baby Krishna climbed up onto her little crib and looked in at this beautiful baby girl. And for the first time, she opened her eyes and saw Krishna, because she didn't want to open her eyes until she could see the Lord of her life, the essence and the purpose of her life, Shri Krishna. So there was a great celebration that now she was no longer blind, and Krishna understood that his eternal consort had appeared. So she is the original feminine goddess, the internal pleasure potency of Lord Krishna, and together they unite. And they are the original divine feminine and divine masculine, which I think is so beautiful on the bhakti path, because there are some people who worship the goddess alone, and there's some people who worship a male form of divinity. But on this beautiful path of bhakti, we have together the male and female together in union. So at the essence of all existence, at the center of all existence, is this beautiful love affair of Radha and Krishna. And we can also find joy in excavating our sacred connection to them in love and in service. So they are eternally one, but then in order to enjoy pleasure pastimes, they again become two as Radha and Krishna. They are eternally two. And then they again become one as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yes, and all of their loving affairs are manifestations of Krishna's internal potency. But Krishna sees that the pleasure of Sri Radha is greater than his own pleasure. And so he appears as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the mood of Sri Radha with her beautiful golden complexion in order to taste what she's tasting in her highest love and ecstasy. So let me read a little something if I can find. Where did I put it? Yes. I want to read something. So they're really one, but they enjoy themselves as two. So here's a little something I wanted to read. One day, Krishna sat beside Radhika in the forest of Vrindavan. Taking one of her hands in his, he pleaded, "Please give me something special today." Inwardly, Sri Radha's heart melted at his request, but outwardly, and this is the nature of Radha, outwardly, she concealed her secret mind with a studied silence. Speaking no words, but with the tilt of her head, her sidelong glance, and the sign language of her lotus hand, she invited Krishna to tell her what he wanted. And Sri Krishna eagerly obliged her silent invitation with an outburst, "Please give me your love." Radha smiled and responded playfully, "Oh, but Krishna, this love of mine would be too heavy for you to bear." Just then, the best of Radha's devoted girlfriends, the saucy Lalita, chimed in. "Radha's love would be too heavy for you, Krishna. You should know how intense it is. When you are not near, her anxiety knows no limit. And though we try our best, there's no remedy that can be found to assuage her distress. We anoint her body, flaming from the fire of separation, with cooling sandalwood paste, but the sandalwood flies from her body like dry leaves of paper. We ask her to lie down on a shaded bed we prepared, strewn with dampened lotus petals, but the fragrant petals are incinerated by the fever of her longing. So it's true, none but the queen of Raja, Radha, could bear the weight. It would be too heavy for you, Krishna. So hearing these words, Krishna grabbed hold of Radharani's other hand, and with tears coming from his lotus eyes, he implored once more, "But I cannot live without tasting the nectar of this love." Astonished by joy, Sri Radha broadly smiled, and as if orchestrated by her heartbeat, all of Raja, which means Vrindavan, where they lived, fell silent, and everyone, all the animals, everyone was eavesdropping to hear her jubilant declaration. She said, "All right, beloved, I will give you this love you crave, but there's something more. You will need the sanctuary of my golden complexion to shield your beautiful blackish body, because the intensity of my love will cause you to stumble and fall. And without the protection of my golden effulgence, you will be bruised. The golden hue will indemnify you instantly. No harm will come to ever overtake your soft body, which is more dear to me than life itself." So Krishna was concealed by the molten gold of Sri Radha's dazzling complexion, which causes him to adopt her mood and inner disposition. His limbs began to tremble and dance in jubilation, and he began to cry out as Radha does, "Oh Krishna, where are you? Where are you? Oh descendant moon, arisen from the dynasty of Nanda Maharaj and Yasoda, where are you? Oh beloved of my life breath, where are you?" As soon as Krishna possessed and was possessed by this love, his amorous cries transformed the landscape. The stones within earshot melted in ecstasy. The trees began to dance, and the ardor of his love, he felt caused him to crash down like a tree torn from the earth by a gale and cast to the ground. And so it was that Sri Radha's beautiful golden effulgence protected him as she had promised. This is Sri Chaitanya Gauranga Mahaprabhu exhibiting Sri Radha's mood in loving Sri Krishna, the greatest love covered by the complexion and mood of Sri Radha. So yes, this is the beautiful mood of Sri Radha. And she shares with Krishna and appears as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Radha and Krishna are one. But when Krishna is enjoying with Radharani and her expansions, her beloved gopi friends, it's described to be that he's like a child playing with his own reflection in a mirror. Radha and Krishna are like a lamp with two wicks, or like a flower, two flowers growing on one stem, or sometimes we like to say like a chickpea is one, but it divides into two halves. I wanted to tell you a funny story, or kind of sad, that once we were in South India and we were checking into a hotel, my husband and I, and there was a woman at the desk, and she kept looking at us with kind of very disdainfully. And finally, when we came up to the desk, she sort of blurted out, "How can you worship a God who dances in the dead of night with other people's wives?" And we assumed she was probably a Christian, maybe not, but when the colonialists, British, went to India, they were very puritanical, and they influenced people's thinking in this way, that Krishna is very immoral. He dances at night with other people's wives. But we have to understand this internal, mysterious, secret understanding. The gopis are eternally and internally belonging to Krishna in Vrindavan. And they have a consciousness of being married to others with Krishna as their illicit lover. But this is just created to heighten the intensity of love. And we should understand that great renunciates like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and many others worship their mood as the highest example of the purest love. So yeah, Radharani and her gopi friends are the expansions of Krishna's personal internal energy. And excuse me, the heart of Radha is like a mirror in which Krishna sees his own form. So sometimes people say this, that Krishna is immoral. And you might want to ask, well, what did Srila Prabhupada reply to this kind of accusation and condemnation of Krishna? So one man said this to Prabhupada once, and Prabhupada responded in kind of a very cheeky way. And he said, actually, your wife also belongs to Krishna. So you are the one who is enjoying with someone else's wife. And actually you yourself are also Krishna's wife. So this is the internal understanding that we all, whether we're male or female in this world, we have to give up the false predominating male ego and recognize that we can actually enjoy more, understanding our true nature, not as independent enjoyers, but rather as Krishna's beloved parts and parcels. So yes, all living beings have that nature. And it's so interesting that all over the world, men and women are inspired to direct their prayers to the more compassionate face of divinity. So we see this in Christianity. People feel that there'll be more compassion, more mercy if they approach Mother Mary. And in Asia, there are goddesses of compassion like Kuan Yin and Tara. And on the path of bhakti, we're also directed to offer our prayers, not directly to Krishna, but to the compassionate nature of Krishna, who is exemplified in Sri Radha. And yeah, as women on the path of bhakti, we have to understand this, that advancement means to give up this dominating, controlling male ego, whether we're men or women. And the mercy of Sri Radha, does it only flow to the women? No, it flows to anyone who is simple, sincere, without duplicity and without ulterior motives. So what does that mean, without ulterior motives or without duplicity? It means that I'm a flawed person and I'm just trying to act and serve with sincerity. And I shouldn't try to create a mask or a hidden agenda that I'm someone great or more than what I am, because mercy can flow to those who are just trying in an authentic way. So I want to share with you a beautiful prayer in this kind of mood from the great Rupa Goswami. He was the greatest, really considered the greatest, the one who understood the mood of Lord Chaitanya among all the followers of Lord Chaitanya. But although he was so great, this is his prayer in really in heartbreaking humility, and he's ardently imploring Sri Radha, and he's instructing all of us. So here's what he says. He says, I, a distressed soul belonging to you, Sri Radha, beg you with sweet words while rolling on the banks of the Yamuna. Although I am unfit, an offender with a crooked mind, please bestow on me a fragment of the gift of service to you. This unhappy soul is not fit to be neglected by you, for you have a butter-soft heart that melts constantly by the warmth of your compassion. So Srila Prabhupada also explains that if we have a prayer, we should offer our sincere prayer into the hand, put my right hand up, into the hand of Sri Radha, and she will recommend you to Krishna rather than praying to Krishna directly. And she will say, Prabhupada said it in such a funny way, that even if you are a rascal number one, Radharani will say to Krishna, this devotee is better than me. Please accept her. So that's why in Vrindavan, all the devotees are praying and seeking the mercy and the compassion of Sri Radha. And she is the most worshipable. And Srila Prabhupada once said that, this is funny also, Srila Prabhupada said that Krishna by himself is not particularly beautiful, but when he stands next to Radha, he becomes so beautiful. So the Supreme Lord Krishna is her property, and she can give him to you by her mercy. And I wanted to also share that Srila Prabhupada's father was a very pure and very liberal-hearted Vaishnava. And every day Srila Prabhupada said he would have at least half a dozen sadhus over for lunch every day. And as a young man, Srila Prabhupada was seeing that many of these sadhus were not very authentic, but still his father was so liberal, he was inviting each and every stripe of sadhu over to their house for lunch. And every sadhu that he met, Srila Prabhupada's father would request them, please bless my son to become a very good devotee of Srimati Radharani. So isn't that such an instruction for us, that we can be praying like that? And I was also thinking that when Srila Prabhupada was on the ship Jaladuta en route to New York, he wrote a prayer. And he was imploring all people of the world. Here he is in the middle of the ocean, right? But he's imploring all the people of the world, the ones he's about to meet, the ones he already met in India, all people, he's imploring us all to seek the mercy of Srimati Radharani if we want to truly receive the mercy of Krishna. Just imagine Srila Prabhupada praying this in the middle of the ocean. Here's his prayer. He says, I emphatically say to you all, O brothers, but I would add, O sisters, you will obtain your good fortune from the Supreme Lord Krishna only when Srimati Radharani becomes pleased with you. So I'm sure you've all heard that we follow a line of gurus. Perhaps you are initiated by a guru or intending to be initiated by a guru. And in the bhakti path, perhaps your guru is following Srila Prabhupada, who is following his guru, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, whose appearance day is today, all the way back to Krishna, right? At the head of our disciplic succession. But we might ask a question, who is Krishna's guru? Did you ever think about that? Who is Krishna's guru? Well, Krishna reveals this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where he says, Radhikara prema guru ami shishyanata sada amanana nritye nachaya udbata. He says, the love of Radhika is my guru, my teacher, and I am her dancing pupil. Her prema, or her divine love, makes me dance various novel dances. And he says, I am the full spiritual truth, and I am made of full joy. But the love of Sri Radhika drives me mad. I do not know the strength of Radha's love, in which she always overwhelms me. So once Lord Krishna considered in his heart that everyone says, I am complete bliss, full of all rasas, and all the world derives pleasure from me, but is there anyone who can give me pleasure? And he answers his own question. He says, one who has 100 times more qualities than me could give pleasure to my mind. One more qualified than me is impossible to find in the world, but in Radha alone, I feel the presence of one who can give me pleasure. Although my beauty defeats the beauty of 10 million cupids, although it is unequaled and unsurpassed, and although it gives pleasure to the three worlds, seeing Radharani gives pleasure to my eyes. I'll read a few more verses because they're so sweet. The vibration of my transcendental flute attracts the three worlds, but my ears are enchanted by the sweet words of Srimati Radharani. Although my body lends fragrance to the entire creation, the scent of Radharani's limbs captivates my mind and heart. Thus, although I am the source of all happiness for the entire world, the beauty and attributes of Sri Radhika are my life and soul. So there's one, yes, I think I have time. There's one other prayer to Radharani that I want to share with you that's unlimitedly beautiful. Vrindavan's queen brings limitless pure bliss to he whose face is Vrindavan's splendid moon, risen from the nectar ocean of bliss and love. She fills Vrindavan with nectar, and she makes her beautiful friends again and again shed tears, and their bodily hairs stand erect in wonderful ecstatic love, just like her own. That's from the Vrindavan Mahimamrita. So in conclusion, I just wanted to say that, there are so many mantras that we could chant, so many beautiful names of God, as innumerable as the waves on the ocean. But we chant this Hare Krishna Mahamantra because it is called a Jugala mantra, which means it's a mantra that combines the divine names of Radha and Krishna together. And when we hear the Rama in this Hare Krishna mantra, sometimes people say it means Lord Ram or it means Balaram, but we can also understand that the Rama in the Hare Krishna Mahamantra means Radhika Raman, referring to the lover and enjoyer of Sri Radhika, Sri Radha Ramana, Radhika Raman. So thank you all so much for joining us today, and I just would humbly request each one of you to please pray for the compassionate mercy of Sri Radhika, and I always pray for all of the people who join the Urban Devi Sangha. So thank you so very much. Jai Shri Krishna and Jai Shri Radhe. And I think we have some time for questions, I hope. And I have so many other things I want to share if there's time. I didn't want to monopolize the time, but if there is time. Are there any questions?
If anyone has any questions, Leela Devi will ask them to Rukmini, but you can go ahead and type them, yeah, to post any questions that you have into the chat.
Okay. Is a question there?
There's a question here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Rukmini. So, does Radha have any plants or gems associated with her?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. Well, of course, the sacred Tulsi plant is a forest goddess. I mean, the word Vrindavan, which is the place, Krishna never takes a step out of Vrindavan. And so Vrindavan is named after Vrinda Devi, which is a name for Tulsi Maharani. So she is the choreographer. She is the one who tells the birds when to sing and the sun when to rise and orchestrates all the pastimes of Vrindavan. So I would say certainly Tulsi is Krishna's favorite plant. Although when you see Tulsi, she's not as beautiful as a rose or a lotus. She's very unassuming, and that's part of her beauty. So certainly the Tulsi plant. And as far as jewels, I don't know the answer to that. We could try to search more. You know, Krishna has the Vaidurya Mani, which he wears on his chest. He has a Kaustuba gem. And, but there is a love locket that is, there's a little book by Viswanath Chakravarti Thakur where he talks about the love locket. Let me just read. So a love locket. Let me just read a little paragraph from there. She says, Radha says, all the conceptions people have that Krishna and I both know each other's minds, or that we always like to be together with each other, are in fact greatly mistaken delusions. So she says, Krishna and I have but one soul, and it is not possible for one soul to become two at any time. So she says, yeah, just as a single lotus stem in a lake blooms forth two flowers, one blue and one yellow, similarly our one soul manifesting here in Vrindavan within the lake full of extremely limitless rasa, or enjoyable pastimes, has sprouted forth our two bodies of blue and yellow color. And yeah, so since they're one, I would say he most likely shares his Kaustubha Mani and his Vaidurya Mani jewels with her. That's a beautiful question. Thank you so much. I know all the Urban Devi participants always like to get a wonderful, powerful visual for worshiping Radha and Krishna. And once Srila Prabhupada said that when you're chanting, you can place Radha, when you're chanting their names, their holy names, you can place them in your mind and heart. You can place them on a diamond throne. So isn't that beautiful? The idea of in your meditation, placing them on a beautiful diamond throne on the pure lotus of your heart. So yeah, there are some plants for plant lovers and jewel lovers. Mm-hmm. Are there more questions?
We have a question. What's the pastime with bees and Radha?
There are several. There are several actually. One pastime is when Radha and Krishna were on a swing together, and a bee was buzzing around her face. A bumblebee was buzzing around her face, and it was disturbing her and frightening her. And Krishna's friend, who's always kind of the comic relief in the Vrindavan pastimes, his name is Madhu Mangala. He said, I'll drive that Madhusudan away. So Madhusudan is a name for Krishna, and it's also a name for the bee Madhu, the one who is always seeking sweetness, and that's also a name for Krishna. So he said, I'll drive that Madhusudana away. And then what happened was he drove the bee away, but Radharani became overwhelmed with a type of ecstasy called prema vaichikya, which is a feeling of separation even when the two of them are together. So even though she and Krishna were sitting on the swing together, she became overwhelmed with this feeling that they were separated. So she began to weep that, oh, my Krishna has left. You've driven my Madhusudana away. And then Krishna, seeing that she was overwhelmed with feelings of separation, he also became overwhelmed with feelings of separation. So then they began to say each other's names, and then they realized that they were there together, actually, in fact. So that's one beautiful pastime with bumblebees. And then, of course, there's the longer pastime, which I suggest you all read, that's in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, where Krishna sends his cousin Uddhava to Vrindavan. Now, Uddhava is the dearest devotee of Krishna in Dwarka. He is a disciple of Brihaspati. So he's very, very learned. He adores Krishna. He always wears Krishna's Mahaprasadam garland. And he looks like Krishna. He's kind of bluish, and he looks very much like Krishna. But Krishna wanted to send him to Vrindavan to appease the suffering hearts of the residents of Vrindavan, his parents, Nanda and Yasoda, and the cowherd boys, and especially his gopi friends, especially Radharani. So Krishna sent him to Vrindavan for the purpose of appeasing their hearts. And Uddhava was a little proud, and he thought he would instruct them in meditation, jnana yoga, dhyana, different kinds of meditation. But so he came and he met with Nanda and Yasoda, the parents of Krishna. But when he met the gopis and Radharani, he was overwhelmed by the madness of their feelings of separation. And in this pastime, there's a beautiful exchange with a bee who's also flying around the face of Radharani. And she starts criticizing the bee she starts to talk to Uddhava by talking to the bee. It's very, very charming and very cheeky. And she says, you, Uddhava, you bee, you, both of you, you are an unreliable servant of an unreliable master. And so don't try to trick me, because we gopis are not ready to be tricked by the unreliable, untrustworthy Krishna once again. And why should we even talk about Krishna? We should talk about something else, because talking about Krishna is just giving us pain. So let's talk about something else. And so Uddhava was overwhelmed seeing the ecstatic feelings of separation of Radharani and the gopis. And he realized that he had not something to teach, but he had much to learn from them. So the prayers of Uddhava are there. And as he leaves Vrindavan, he stayed there for some months, and he really appeased their hearts because he looked so much like Krishna, and they were there enjoying pastimes with him. But when he was leaving, he says a beautiful prayer that, let me just take birth as grass here in Vrindavan, so that the gopis can just trample over me while I'm coming in and out of Vrindavan. And if you go to Vrindavan, near Govardhan, there's a place where the residents there will point out to you, this is the place where Uddhava is living here in the form of grass. So very beautiful pastimes with bumblebees, unreliable servants of unreliable masters. You can look it up in the 10th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. If you can't find it, look in the index under Srimati Radharani, if you have the Bhagavatams. If you don't have a set of Bhagavatams, this is the time to get them, because there's great spiritual fortune in giving or receiving a set of Srimad Bhagavatams on this Bhadra Purnima, which is Tuesday. So the month of Bhadra, and the full moon is Tuesday. I have an extra set. My husband he's not using his office anymore, so I'm going to give the extra set we have. We gave a set to my sister Susan when we went to Maine, so she's happily relishing them now. And we have another set we're going to give to one of my Patreon friends, going to drive it up to his house in Baltimore on Tuesday. So any other questions? I have more to share if there's no questions.
There are a couple questions. This one is so sweet, and I will also share what I heard regarding this. I heard from our dear Rajalila, who's also here with us today. Does Radharani have a favorite preparation that she likes to cook for Krishna? So I don't know if she has a favorite preparation for him, but my understanding is that she never cooks the same thing twice for him, which is incredible. And I told this to my poor husband because I have like favorite dishes that I'm making over and over, and I'm sure he's like tired of them. And I said, "Do you know what Radharani does? She never makes the same thing twice." It's beyond my understanding. So yes, does she have something that she particularly likes to make him?
Well, actually, I've heard that there's a certain, I mean, talk about, like we were talking about how Tulsi Devi is a very humble plant. There's a very humble vegetable also that looks kind of like an unassuming potato, but it's called arbi. And you can find it in Indian stores. I haven't seen it in a regular American grocery store, but a Chinese grocery store or an Indian grocery store, you can find arbi. And it looks like it kind of looks like a little possum rolled up. It's like a little potato. But Radharani likes arbi. And as a matter of fact, one of my friends in the UK the other day on Radhastami sent me a recipe for a preparation, and I think I should post it on Urban Devi. It's cooked with tomatoes and different spices, and it's sort of like a potato substitute, but it's much healthier than eating potatoes. So yeah, I think I should post it. Wouldn't that would be good, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'll do that.
And we have, what is your favorite pastime with Srimati Radharani and why? Will you please tell it?
Okay, well, my most favorite pastime is this very cheeky pastime that's written by the great Bhagavatam commentator and one of our great acharyas, Viswanath Chakravarti Thakur. Actually, I have so many, it's really hard. That's the most difficult question I've ever received in my life. But there's one pastime where Krishna, he disguises himself as a demigoddess, and he comes to the house of Radharani, and he starts criticizing Krishna. And he said that we demigoddesses in the heavenly planets have been observing your pastimes with Krishna. And we think he's very mean to you. He's very unkind to you, the way he disappears, the way he does this, that, and the other thing. And why do you have so much love for him? And so it's really, really cute because it's Krishna posing as a demigoddess and then criticizing Krishna like anything. This pastime, I really wanted to share it, but it just goes on and on. It's too long. So, but I will read one thing. So Krishna's complaining about Krishna, disguised Krishna's complaining about Krishna. And why are you so in love with him? He's so mean to you. How can you love him so purely? And then Radharani, I'll just read a little paragraph. She says, she's talking about her own purest love. And she says, I'm going to try to just summarize this. When one's mind is endowed with affection that is purified of all other motives, it then ascends a throne, a throne with a lion on it, right? A lion throne of its own natural position. So pure love ascends to a lion's throne of its own natural position, right? And from this platform, one performs actions only to give pleasure to one's beloved, or whatever happiness one feels by performing is only indicative of pure love. So then she says, just a little bit more, please bear with me. I know it's difficult to listen to reading. She says, just as the lion conquers his prey and nourishes himself, similarly, this extremely powerful love nourishes itself by instantly consuming or gobbling up the limitless difficulties of all worldly things. So if you feel like you're having problems in the material world, I'm injecting this, try approaching pure love. So she says, That includes all problems caused by living in the present world or in the next, plus all disturbances caused by family members, enemies, one's own body, all things related to the body, and also all difficulties that are caused by one's own beloved, even if the difficulties seem as insurmountable as a mountain. I'll just read you a few more lines because it's so sweet. She says, now she's giving this metaphor of this pure love to be like a lion, right? Her pure love is like a lion. So she says, the silky-haired lion is very proud, totally fearless, and full of confidence. When he goes to sleep, does he feel apprehensive if a dog comes nearby? No. Just as the lion could easily conquer the dog for his own self-interest, similarly, all difficulties that I just mentioned are effortlessly dispelled by this pure love. It is likened to the way darkness is dispelled by the bright illumination of a lamp. So that's something beautiful I like to share. But I have more if there's time, but I want to hear your questions. We should have a whole Radharani day or a whole Radharani retreat.
There's actually, that's actually a really great idea. There's something here. It's very, very beautiful. I tend to lean and pray to Krishna and lack in my leaning on Radharani. It may be because of growing up in Krishna worship, in Krishna consciousness, I think, worshiping home, or just lack of my own spiritual advancement. Is that wrong? I hear over and over that we should approach Krishna through Radha, just as people approach Jesus through Mary. Can you recommend how one can be more open to seeking shelter from her?
I'm going to tell you a story of a friend of mine who grew up in India. She's a beautiful devotee of Krishna. And she grew up in India and she was always singing. She has a lovely voice and she was always singing beautiful Meera bhajans and worshiping Krishna in her heart. But she always felt a little bit kind of suspicious or uncomfortable with Radharani. She kind of felt like, where do I fit in if Krishna is dancing with Radharani? And she always kind of had this same kind of problem that I just don't see where Radharani fits in the picture because Krishna actually is mine. So then at one point she had a dream one night, and in her dream, Radharani came in her dream and she said to my friend, she said, if you like, you can stand next to Krishna and I'll go stand on the other side of the room because you love Krishna and you can stand next to him. That's all right. So my friend woke up and was so amazed at having this dream where Radharani showed such kind and gracious mercy to her. So yeah, some people worship Krishna without Radha, but in our line, this is the path of humility to worship Krishna as Radha's Krishna, that she belongs to him and we also belong to her. So we are her. Actually, you know what I should do? That question brought up something interesting for me. I'm going to read. I have more things I can read if there's time. But since today is it the appearance, or I think it's the appearance of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So in answer to this question, how can we understand to worship Radha more than Krishna? Here's a translation of one of the songs at the very end of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Sharanagati. And he's talking about himself as the servant of Sri Radha. This is coming in the line of Lord Chaitanya, coming in the line of Rupa Goswami. All the devotees consider themselves servants of Sri Radha. So this is just a few verses. He says, for serving the lotus feet of Sri Radha, the daughter of Vrishabhanu, I will become a maidservant of one of the gopis, in Vraja. I will always strive to bring about the happiness of Sri Radha. Within my heart, I will know that Radha's pleasure is Krishna's source of joy. Therefore, I will never desire to abandon her lotus feet for his solitary company. The Sakis are my best friends and teachers concerning the love uniting Radha with Krishna. As one of their attendants, I will serve Radha's lotus feet, which are like wish-fulfilling desire trees. I myself am always partial to Radhika, and therefore never look at those who have abandoned Radha's entourage, whoever they may be and whatever their ways. So this is the line of disciplic succession coming in the line of Lord Chaitanya. There are people who, as I said, there are people who worship Krishna without Radha, but that's not in this line of humility coming from Sri Radha, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and coming down through our acharyas like Srila Rupa Goswami. So please pray to Radharani and ask her to help you understand the sweetness and greatness of her love, and how she will bless you to also love Krishna, and how Krishna is hers and she has the power to give him to us. I hope that's helpful.
Beautiful.
That's beautiful, Rukmini. I wanted to just share very quickly something related to what you were saying about your friend, because actually years ago, you were the one who mentioned this to me, and it completely changed my perspective on Radharani. And you were the one who said that she will bring you to Krishna and say this devotee is better than me. And this selfless, complete getting out of the way, wanting everyone to love Krishna more than she does, is so counterintuitive, because it's the opposite of the way our world works. And so it has helped me just try to find those qualities, right, of not being envious, of not being possessive, of not being having those types of things that manifest in so many different ways. But it's always been such a special thing for me to remember that she just always puts everyone else in front of her. Everyone goes in front. Just please love Krishna. And it really, that consciousness really does transform how we relate to Krishna and relate to others relating to Krishna. And this
Beautiful.
understanding that he can be all of yours, and he can be all of mine too, and all of Radharani's, and there's so much of him to go around.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, actually, once when I was first initiated in Montreal, someone asked a question that, how can we say my Lord? How can we say my anything? And Prabhupada said, but Krishna is yours and you are his, and nothing else is yours, but Krishna is yours and he is mine and he is everyone's, just like you were just saying so beautifully, Leela. So that's like a Mahavakya, or almost like a mantra in itself from Srila Prabhupada, that Krishna is yours, he is mine, and he's everyone's. That's all. That's what he said. And I wanted to share something else in that connection, that there was one devotee. Actually, he lives in New York, and sometimes he gives a class at the Bhakti Center on Sundays. His name is Rameshwar. And he was one of the great leaders of Sankirtan, and really inspiring and encouraging devotees to go out and Harinam Sankirtan and also distribute books. And he was telling the devotees when he was living in Los Angeles that this Sankirtan, sharing the holy name, sharing books about Krishna, is in the mood of the gopis. And so some devotees thought, I never heard that. This is bogus. And they came to Srila Prabhupada asking Srila Prabhupada, is this true? Because this is what Rameshwar is saying. And Prabhupada said, yes, actually, this is true. He has actually understood correctly. Because this mood of sharing the holy name, of sharing the qualities of Krishna, sharing anything about Krishna, his name, his form, his qualities, his pastimes, this is in the mood of the gopis, that pulling others to Krishna, that you are dear to Krishna, you go to Krishna, I'll stay behind. So that's so much in the mood of the gopis, in this unselfish, magnanimous spirit. And this is, like we say, Lord Chaitanya is the most magnanimous avatar, right? What is that magnanimity? that is because he is always bringing everyone unconditionally to Krishna, that he breaks open the storehouse of love of God and says, just take it, take it. You don't have to have any qualifications. So sometimes Prabhupada says that Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita says, you have to surrender. Sarva dharmam parityajya mamekam. Surrender unto me. But Lord Chaitanya doesn't say that because he's more magnanimous. So he is in the mood of Radharani. You don't have to do anything. Just come. Just take it, take it, take it. So it's very beautiful. Very, very beautiful.
There's a great point here by Liz. Isn't the idea behind the Rasa Leela that each gopi believes he is engaging with just each of them and also at the same time?
Beautiful. So beautiful. Isn't that beautiful? And you know, about a week or so ago, I gave a class. I did the Bhagavat Shravanam class at Bhakti Center. And there was one quality that was mentioned in those verses that I was speaking from, where Krishna has unlimited qualities. He has unlimited living entities, right? Innumerable living entities, all of us. And he has innumerable qualities. And there's a certain quality that he has that's unique for each one of us. So there's a certain quality he has for attracting you, Leela, and you, Chandravalava, and you, Champaklata, and you, Susan. There's a certain quality meant for us to discover that will attract our hearts in one unique way that he has for each one of us. That's so beautiful, right? And yeah, he is there dancing with each one of the gopis, with each one of us unlimitedly.
That is incredible. We have two more really good questions. I'll ask this one first because it goes along the line. So can you speak about the name of Srimati Radharani? Does it mean giving and nurturing, and what else? I see references to that meaning in I think this is Srimad Bhagavatam 4:24, 18, and 33 in relation to Shiva Mahadev and Bhagavan Vasudev, Krishna.
Well, her name, Aradhana, means to worship. So her name means the one who is the greatest worshiper of Krishna. And there's a beautiful verse. She has so many names. Like I mentioned one at the beginning, Veda Gopya, that her name is a secret in the Vedas. But she has so many, many beautiful names. And here's a beautiful verse. Govinda Nandini Radha, Govinda Mohini, Govinda Sarvasva, Sarva Kanta Shiromani. Radha is the one who gives pleasure to Govinda. She is also the enchantress of Govinda. She is the be-all and end-all of Govinda and the crest jewel of all his consorts. It's funny, you know, there's someone I'm mentoring here in Washington, D.C. I don't know if she's on the call right now, but she's Indian, and she married a man who is not a devotee, and he was very interested in hearing her tell him about Krishna and give him instructions about Krishna. So I was telling this to Radhanath Swami just before she was initiated, and Radhanath Swami gave her the beautiful name Radha Swamini. In other words, Radha is Krishna's guru. Radha is Krishna's Swamini. So that's really beautiful. Maybe I could share something else if there's only one or two more questions. Can I share something else?
Yes, please.
Okay, I want to share this. The story goes that once Radha confides in her Sakis, that means her girlfriends, that Shyam Sundar loves me a lot. And they ask her, how do you know? She explained that whatever I want him to do, he does. And whenever I want him to do something, he does it. From this, I guess he loves me a lot. So the gopi said, well, give us an example of what he did that you wanted. So Radharani remained quiet. And the gopis were surprised, and they said, at least tell us one thing. And Radharani said, that's a big dilemma, actually, because the problem is that whatever he does is to my liking. I'm not sure if he does what I like or I like what he does. My mind thinks that what he has done is what I want. So Radha's heart poignantly reveals the non-difference between her and Krishna. That's really sweet. It's beautiful, right? So is there another question? Because if there's another question, then we could take that question. Then I can also read something else that I wanted to read, because there's so many beautiful, unlimited things to share.
Yes, we have time for both. So this question says, maybe there hasn't been enough emphasis on Radharani. After all, our movement is called Krishna consciousness. What are your
That's a good point. And the fact is that Radharani's name is kept very secret. So it's not for kind of mass consumption, you would say, or frivolous like showcasing externally. Because let's face it, a lot of times when men think of a woman, they think, I'm the enjoyer. So they might, most men in the world might think I could be the enjoyer. And as a matter of fact, in India, when we see goddess worship, in fact, most of those people are full of material desires, and they want to enjoy the goddess. When they worship the goddess separately, without, in other words, not like Lakshmi Narayan or Shiva and Parvati or Vishnu and Lakshmi or Radha and Krishna or Sita and Ram, when they're only worshiping the goddess independently, first of all, the goddess is not very happy, because she's happy when she's in consort with her beloved. So that idea of worshiping Saraswati for knowledge, or for, like, sometimes musicians worship Saraswati, she's not so happy when she's worshiped by herself like that. And the mood of that kind of worship is that I will enjoy the goddess, I will predominate the goddess. But actually that position is already taken. And there's two Sanskrit words, Shakti, which many of us know. Shakti means energy or power. So there's Shakti and Shaktiman. So the Vishnu forms are Krishna forms. Krishna is Shaktiman. That means he's the one he is the possessor of all energy. I think it said that in one of these verses I read, that he is the possessor. Yeah. Sri Radha is the full power, and Lord Krishna is the possessor of full power. The two are not different, as evidenced by the revealed scriptures. So on this bhakti path that's given in the line of acharyas from Srila Prabhupada, from Rupa Goswami, coming from Lord Chaitanya, it's a very humble and I think very balanced mood of worshiping the masculine and feminine together in consort, in balance. Now, that's not to say that there hasn't been too much male testosterone in ISKCON and other types of worship. There has. So we're trying to balance that out now by uplifting the voices of the women. Maybe you might have seen these two new books, Emergence of Women's Voices, or Srila Prabhupada's daughters, two new books have come out. So yeah, we're trying to balance out that too much emphasis on male energy. But the name of Radha is very secret, and it's not to be sort of broadcast and shouted from the rafters in a frivolous way, is the way I would respond to that question. I hope that's all right.
Thank you so much. We're okay for questions right now if you'd like to continue.
Okay, I want to share something really beautiful. I'm reading this from the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which is a condensed version of it's a summarized version of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this is, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's this very stunning and sacred conversation between Lord Chaitanya and his very intimate associate Ramananda Roy. So Lord Chaitanya was present in this world for 48 years. 24 of those years he was in Navadvip, Mayapur, and then he went to Puri. And he traveled around India for 6 years from Puri. And then there were about 12 years when he was dancing in Puri, in Sankirtan, and sharing the holy name with everyone. But then the final, so what was that, 6, 12, the final 12 years, final 6 years, I think it is, he was in seclusion with his most intimate associates. And there were 4 of them. One of them was a woman, actually. Her name was Madhavi Mahiti. But one of them was Ramananda Roy. So Ramananda Roy, so they're 2 intimate associates of Lord Chaitanya. Ramananda Roy, who in Vrindavan was Vishaka Gopi, and Swarup Damodar, who was Lalita in Vrindavan. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a beautiful discussion between Ramananda Roy and Lord Chaitanya, but Lord Chaitanya is asking the questions like a student, and Ramananda Roy is being put in the position to have to answer the questions. And it's very, very beautiful exchange. And at one point, Ramananda Roy says, I'm like a puppet. You're asking me these questions, but you're the puppeteer. I'm just a puppet in your hands. And so the questions get more and more deep and more intimate. And first of all, the answers that Ramananda Roy is giving, Lord Chaitanya is rejecting those answers. And the first answer that he accepts is where it's from the prayers of Lord Brahma, again, what I was reading at the Bhagavat Shravana, where he says this beautiful prayer that just stay in your position. You don't have to give up your job. You don't have to leave New York. You don't have to leave Maine. You don't have to leave New Jersey. You can just stay and do whatever you're doing, but just really celebrate the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Lord Krishna. So this was the first answer that Lord Chaitanya accepted. And then he said, now go further, now go further. So in this conversation, sorry? Okay, that was a sneeze, I think. Okay, in this conversation, there's something very, very beautiful that Ramananda Roy explains. And he's quoting from a book by Rupa Goswami called the Ujjwala Nilmani. So here's what I wanted to share with you. Radharani, let's see. Radharani, her body is an evolution of transcendental pleasure. That body is decorated with flowers and fragrant aromas and complete with transcendental love for Krishna. Indeed, that body is the personification of his pleasure potency. And here it gets really sweet. Radharani bathes her transcendental body 3 times. First, in the water of mercy. Second, in the water of youthful beauty. And third, in the water of youthful luster. After she bathes 3 times in that way, her body is covered with shining garments and decorated with her personal beauty, which is compared to cosmetics. Thus, her beauty constitutes the highest artistry. Her body is also decorated with the ornaments of spiritual ecstasy, trembling, shedding of tears, perspiring, choking of the voice, cessation of all bodily functions due to transcendental pleasure, and the standing up of the bodily hairs, changing the color of her body, and madness. Is there time for me to read a little bit more of this? I think so. Yeah, Leela, it's okay?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, go for it. Okay. Then, the decorative transcendental pleasure potency manifests 9 symptoms. 5 of these are manifested by the expansion of Radharani's personal beauty, which is adorned with garlands of flowers. Her patient calmness is compared to a covering of cloths which have been cleansed by camphor. Her confidential agony for Krishna is the knot in her hair, and the mark of tilak on her forehead is her good fortune. Radharani's sense of hearing is eternally fixed on Krishna's name and fame. Chewing betel nuts makes one's lips reddish. Similarly, Radharani's complete attachment to Krishna has blackened the borders of her eyes. This darkness might be compared to ointment produced by Radha's joking with Krishna. Radharani's smile is just like the taste of camphor. The garland of separation moves on her body when she lies down on the bed of pride within the room of aroma. Her breasts are covered by the blouse of anger, born of her ecstatic affection for Krishna. Her reputation as the best of all of Krishna's girlfriends is the stringed instrument she plays. When Krishna stands in his youthful posture, She puts her hand on his shoulder. Although she possesses so many transcendental qualities, she is still always engaged in the service of Krishna. Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Rukmini.
Yeah, actually, there's one other thing I would like to say, that all of this is so extraordinarily personal, isn't it? Like Krishna comes to Vrindavan as the supreme personality of Godhead. He becomes relative. Absolute truth becomes relative. He becomes everybody's relative. So everyone can relate to him like like their own relative. So this path of bhakti is like radical personalism. It's a radical personalism, and sometimes it's too much. Like some people say, it's just so personal, it's just too sweet, I can't stand it. So yeah, this is a path of radical personalism, that you are his and he is yours, and he loves you and adores you just like you are, and he's giving you from within your heart instructions how to come closer to him and how to love him more. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. If there are any more questions, you can please put them on the chat. We have just a few more minutes before we close out with some announcements. And
Yeah.
Rukmini, I actually do have a question for you. This personalism and also the fact that Radharani is so confidential. And so I'm wondering if it's appropriate when we not worship, but when we offer respects and gratitudes, for example, to Mother Earth. Is it, am I correct that Radharani is the source of all other goddesses? And in that
Yes.
way, those gratitudes and prayers are, we can understand that they're going directly to her?
Yes. All other goddesses of the world, if you think of Mother Mary or Kuan Yin or Tara or the goddess of the earth, Bhumi Devi, or all the, in the Dwarka Lila, Krishna has 16,108 wives, and they're all expansions of the pleasure potency of Sri Radha. Those gopis of Vrindavan are all her personal expansions. And all the gopis of Vrindavan take a place as Krishna's wives in Dwarka. So even like Rukmini and Satyabhama, all of these wives of Krishna are actually all expanded from Sri Radha. So that's an absolutely correct understanding, that she is, because Krishna, the Srimad Bhagavatam discusses that there's so many innumerable avatars and so many different forms of God, but in the place where it's discussing the avatars of the Lord, it says, Ete chamsa kalap punsam Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. So Krishna is the source of all the other avatars, and Krishna is enjoying on his own planet, his own supreme planet, Goloka Vrindavan, with Srimati Radhika. So they are at the center of all existence, and all the other planets, the Vaikuntha planets. I mean, there are pastimes you can read in Srimad Bhagavatam, when Lakshmi Devi is trying to attain Vrindavan. She's the consort of Vishnu, and she's trying to attain Krishna in Vrindavan, but because she's in this mood of awe and reverence, she can't come in, right? So, and even Lord Shiva tries to enter into Vrindavan, but he has a male ego, and so he can't come in, but they tell him he can be the Gopishwar, he can stand outside of the rasa dance and be a protector. So in Vrindavan, when you go to Vrindavan, first people will go to ask blessings from Lord Shiva as the protector of Vrindavan and the protector of the Vrindavan pastimes. But Radharani is at the very essence, at the very quintessential essence, because she is the heart of Krishna. And as we read earlier, she is Krishna's beloved, she is Krishna's guru, she's Krishna's Swamini. Isn't that beautiful? That Krishna is the guru of all. He's at the heart of everyone, and every guru is just, repeating the wisdom that they learned from Krishna. But who is Krishna's guru? She is Radha. She is her dancing is guru, and he is her dancing pupil.
That's that's incredible. Thank you. There's so many things I didn't know. Thank you so much for sharing. We're gonna start moving into announcements. Um, this is great. I didn't realize how quickly time goes when we're discussing these beautiful transcendental personalities. So thank you all very, very much for your presence, for your questions and your comments. So glad to be here with all of you. Our next Urban Devi is September 27. Well, we will be hosting Ananga Manjari Devi Dasi. She's going to be speaking on the topic of transcendence beyond religion. That sounds really, really enticing. So we will see you then. And also two more announcements. One is that please save the date for our annual Urban Devi Retreat, which this year, because of the current circumstances, is going to be online. And it's going to be an amazing, amazing offering. We have incredible personalities. We have Rukmini, who's going to be speaking, Rambaru, Devi Dasi. We have Raja Leela, Devi Dasi, and just a bunch of other offerings from different personalities. And so we really, really want to see you all there. And that's going to be again October 17th. Starting at 7:30 a.m. With yoga.
But it's
And
virtual, Lila, right? It's
it's
virtual.
virtual. It's all online. You don't have to leave your living room. And the information will come shortly through our group and Rukmini's website. And it is being hosted by the Bhakti Center. So Bhakti Center will also post that information. And the last thing is I wanted to share the link for Rukmini's Patreon account. There is some really, really good stuff there. There's some classes, there's readings, and it's just starting. So all these extra gems of Rukmini speaking. I know we're always asking her for more and more time and more programs, more and more classes. So this is how you get more Rukmini and other things going on. So I've posted the link. It's really, really sweet. So please check that out. And that's everything for right now. Thank you all so very much. Hare Krishna and Radhe Radhe.
Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Shri Krishna.